Hey, I'm Natasha Haskins. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I would say that I grew up in a Christian household from a very young age. I just had this intimate relationship with God. I had a very rough childhood, and there was a lot of bad things that happened to me in my childhood. So the Bible was my solace. The God was the father that I invented in my head that, is that father figure that I needed. Fast forward to me being an adult, I had a very disappointing relationship with somebody that I was engaged to. Some bad choices, but we had a daughter together, and he just broke it off. And after about 4 years of being single, I met my husband, my now husband, and then we got married. After 6 months, we got married. At that point, I had been married for a few years already. And at the beginning of my marriage, my husband was showing signs of being addicted to alcohol. And I subsequently discovered that he was a full-blown addict. He was addicted to alcohol, drugs, all sorts of drugs. And so for the first 9 years of my marriage, I was on my knees praying every day for my husband's salvation. He ended up going to rehab in 2013. And after that, felt like, okay, God is answering my prayers. I could see changes in him and things like that. And then almost a year after that, in September 2014, he was in an accident, in a motorbike accident. I remember getting a call from the hospital saying I need to come to the emergency room immediately. And when I got there, my husband was unrecognizable. And I remember the doctor was basically told me, you can go in to identify the body, but like they had no hope that he would survive the night. So after about a week of being on life support, his body showed signs that he wanted to breathe on his own, and then they took him off life support, but he was in a coma for about 3 months. And I sat at his bed for 3 months, turned into 6 months, turned into 9 months. And then eventually, when he woke up, he had to have physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all these different therapies. He couldn't speak because he needed to relearn everything again. He needed to learn how to speak, how to do everything. And at that point, our kids were 2, 4, and 12 years old at that point. And I was alone. I had no support system. I was looking after my husband, raising my kids, be the sole breadwinner, looking after the household, doing everything on my own. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Asking myself everything that I believed about God, everything that I believed throughout my childhood, was it real? Does God even exist? Does God even care? Every morning I would wake up and I would think God hates me. And that was the narrative that was going on in my mind. And at that point, I turned my back against God. I was like, I'm done praying. I was cursing God, basically. I was just done. Because I wasn't going to church, my parents would ask if the kids could go to church with them. Often my kids would invite me, like, come with, and I would be like, no, the church has nothing to offer me. I'm done with that life. At the end of 2021, they asked me again. And I felt so bad for my kids every time saying no. And they were so excited that I said, yes, I will go to church. And that Sunday, I remember I heard they were speaking about this Alpha course. And I had never heard about Alpha before. I didn't know what it was about, but I just thought, okay, it's a night off. And they mentioned that there was going to be a free meal. So I was like, okay, let me try this. I remember going on the first night, and the people were so inviting. It was just like this inviting, warm, friendly environment where I was welcomed. I was put in a group with other people, and it was just conversation. It was just like, who are you? Getting to know each other, basically. And then at the end of that Alpha, I was invited to the next Alpha that the church was running. And they asked me to be a helper, which I was very confused about. I was like very skeptical, like thinking, what's going on? Why are they asking me, of all people, to be a helper? But I would say that was the point where I started speaking to the Lord again after that. And then I went back on the second Alpha. And at the end of that Alpha, I felt like this was a refresher. I felt like those doubts that I had, is God real? Does He really care? Does He really love me? I felt like the topics that I experienced in that Alpha was like confirmation, like, yes, He does, remember, like, remember. So that was what that Alpha experience was for me. And my kids always used to say, you never smile, you're always sad. And after that Alpha experience, they actually told me, Mommy, you're smiling again. Since then, from being bitter, angry, depressed, it was like a complete turnaround for me. I found my joy again. I found slowly getting back to speaking to the Lord, praying. After my second Alpha, I was asked again to do Alpha again as a helper. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm all in now. I'm like an Alpha girl now. So I ended up doing another one, and then I was a host, and it just kept going and going. And at the end of 2023, I think it was, my church approached me and they asked me to coordinate their Alpha course. And then in 2024, they employed me to be their Alpha coordinator. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm coordinating the Alpha courses for our church on a full-time basis. So from walking into the church grounds, feeling like nobody knows what I'm going through, nobody has gone through what I've gone through, my life is the worst, to walking into the church grounds, how can I be the light to somebody else going through something, no matter how small or how big?